Okay, so this is season 1 episode 2, and actually what we're going to do in this video, we're actually going to talk about the top 10 features for libraries and lists. Most of these features may only apply to libraries. We'll touch on the ones that apply to lists, but I think most of this video is going to be focused on the document library, and towards the end we'll touch on the list. So in this top 10 feature list, we have easier management of columns and views. We want to highlight how easy it is to manage those, minimize the click. Microsoft has done a really good job with honing in and making this extremely easy. Sharing documents or individual documents, breaking inheritance, how easy it is to do that. Pinning documents to the type. This is going to be a document library only type feature. I don't believe that this feature applies to SharePoint lists, but we'll confirm that. How easy it is to edit items or properties on the document. Activity feed, where it actually tracks, who touched what and what was the last activity on the library or a file, which is pretty interesting. The get link feature, which allows for dynamic sharing, meaning that you can share a link out to a file and whoever has access to that link will automatically get access to the file, either read or edit, depends on how you configure that. It also has an anonymous option. Multiple downloads. At the time of this video, this is actually a new feature where you can actually select multiple files in the library and download it as a zip file. Active sync, where you can actually sync a document library to your local laptop or desktop and then be able to interact with those documents accordingly. And this may or may not replace the Explorer view. We'll talk about the differences there. The ability to link to a document, which is actually a very cool feature. We'll take a look at that. And then the people card. So, okay, let's get started. So here, this is a document library. This has the modern UI versus the classic UI, a little bit different. But here, as far as managing columns, there's a plus sign right here on the far right. You just hit plus, single line of text. Let's just call this location. Hit create, and then boom, my column is there. Now this is very cool because before there were multiple clicks to create a column. So now what I can do, I can come into column settings. I can move this to the left, so I can even change the location of the location column. I can move this to the left again, and it doesn't seem to be moving, which is interesting. How come you're not moving to the left? There we go. Sometimes you have to click a little bit harder. Just kidding. So you can move this to the left. You can shift these columns around, which is very convenient. The other piece is that you can come in here. You can do the sorting and filtering, all this other good stuff as you're kind of accustomed to. And then up here is where you keep, where it has like all of your views, so the available views. So you can tell I can be testing with this with Deshaun test and Deshaun test 2. But I can come up here, because this has a little asterisk here, it's let me know that, hey, you were looking at all documents view, you made some changes, do you want to save those changes? So I can do a save view. I can either replace the all documents view and update that with the changes that I've made as far as column positioning and creating new columns, or I can add, let's just call this Deshaun documents. And this is going to allow me to create a new view. And then if I check this or uncheck this, it would be public or private. If it's private, only I can see it. If it's public, anyone who has access to this document library would be able to take advantage of that view. So let's go ahead and leave it public. And then as far as flipping between the views, that's pretty much the same process. Just hit the drop down here, and it just changes to views and all this other good stuff. Now, you may be wondering, okay, when I hit the plus sign, I only get a subset of column types: number, person, date, multi-line, and single line. If you hit the more, this will give you access to all the different column types that you're accustomed to. Management of data, for example, hyperlink picture, currency, so on and so forth. So you still have access to those. From a developer standpoint, and sometimes creating columns has an impact on how you interact with this document library from an API perspective, especially when you start to consider internal names and external names. This easy access or easy way to create columns still adheres to the internal name, display name concept that we're used to in the classic view. So if I do a Deshaun num, for example, no space, and then hit create, that's going to be the internal name for that column. And I know that because if I do a sort, and if I look at the URL, which most of the time uses the internal name, which all of the time uses the internal name, I can see the name here. And this is a bit changed, a little changed than when the modern document library, the modern view, was first released. It seems as if Microsoft or SharePoint was dynamically creating the internal name. It would be like field 123 or field, some number. Where here you actually have full control of that, which is really, really nice. And now, if I want to come up here and make this user friendly, I just go to column settings, rename, and now I can put in caps and spaces and all this other good stuff to make it user friendly. And as the developer, we already know that the internal name is set at the time that the column is created. So any renaming of that column has zero effect on the internal name, which is great, because if we're writing code or functionality or features around that internal name, we don't want that to break as the user changes the display name to make it user friendly for their needs or the end user needs. So with that, so that's columns. So as you can see, managing columns, creating columns, managing views, updating views, creating new views is actually pretty simplistic. A lot of less clicks, number of clicks and navigation that are used to in the classic view, and interacting with the ribbon. So Microsoft has done a really, really good job with cleaning this up. So so now let's talk about sharing. So with sharing, you can select a document, you can click share, and basically this is going to allow you to invite people, and you can control the access if they should be able to view or edit that file. This will break inheritance. You can require sign-in or not. And this is interesting. Actually, this is the first time I'm noticing this option on this particular dialog. And I'm pretty certain this is related to if you're allowing anonymous access or external sharing for this site collection or for your tenant as a whole. And I have to play around with this to see if this disappears or it's not, grayed out if you do not allow external sharing. Obviously, my tenant is set up for external sharing. So I can just come up here and type in Deshaun at Yahoo or dclark at Yahoo. Require sign-in is off. And then if I click share, that's going to send an email out to, with a link to this document. Another way that you can share or see who have access to this particular file is to look at the info section. And then in the info section, it shows you, not only does it show you your activity, which is pretty cool, but also the sharing, who has access to this file in the event that this particular file have unique permissions, meaning different permissions than all the other documents on that library, are the permissions on the library as a whole. So here, this is a really cool, easy way to tell who actually have access to this document. Now, the stop sharing is an interesting feature. If you have, and we're going to talk about this next, the get link option, where you can actually dynamic, I call this dynamic share, but basically what it is that you can come up here and create a link. So if I have this file selected, I select on get link. From get link, you have several options here. You can have restrict, meaning that whoever receives this link must already have access to this library or document. They will, this is going to feel very similar to. Let me just throw this in Notepad so we take a look at it. But really, just feel very similar to just a link to the document itself. I'm not sure what this D number represents, but imagine as if you were just sending a direct path or a link to that document. Only those folks who actually have access to that document will be able to see it. Anyone who does not have access to it will go into the request access process flow. So that's restrict link. View link, where authentication is required. What you're going to do, you're going to create a link. This guy here, this is going to give them guest access, but the user will have to authenticate. So they will have to, they have to be part of your AD or part of your tenant or have access to the site either through external sharing or part of Active Directory. And then when they click on this link, they will be given, what do we set that up as? View access to this document, so they won't be able to modify it. Obviously, if you are a owner or a contributor to this library, you would still, those rights would still kick in. But anyone outside of that group, they will only get a view. So and the same is true for edit. So really, these last four options, meaning that this allows for dynamic access. The first two, where it requires a login or requires a SSLC account, those are just going to be for authenticated users or users who have access to this tenant, and then they would be able to view or edit depending on the link. The last two would be only if you have external sharing enabled for this site collection. I can set this up as a view link, and then I can send this out to a Gmail account, a Yahoo account. I can share that link to whomever. Anyone who clicks on that link will be able to view it without requiring to authenticate. And this is very useful. I actually use this when I'm communicating to a group and I want to share like information. Like for example, we are planning a trip, a family trip, and I wanted to share details about hotel information and all this other good stuff. But I didn't want them, and it's probably a group of 50 or 60 people, and I did not want all 50 or 60 of them in order to view this document to have to go through the Microsoft, creating a Microsoft account and getting access and all this other good stuff. And I also wanted the ability that because I wanted to share, right? I wanted this thing to be exponentially accessible, meaning that I can share it to 10 people. They would share it to their 5 or 6 people that they're responsible to get this information out or to forward the information out, because we're working as a committee. So there's 10 people in the committee, and every person in the committee is responsible for their respective city and getting that information out. So they don't know to forward this link out. So I didn't want any of those folks to have to sign in and log in, and I did not want to be responsible with dealing with access requests. So this was a very safe way for me to share that hotel or travel information without having to know who exactly was going to get access to it. And if I wanted to collaborate with those folks, I would send them a very similar link with the edit link option. So that's the get link. Now, if this thing gets out of hand, meaning that for example, the reunion sharing information, which is actually really cool, because as I get more information, so I was able to share out the reunion or hotel or travel information with just a draft that says, hey, this is what we're working with. What do you guys think? And as I get more and more detail, I can go in there and update that same document without having to resend a link and maybe just send a notification like, okay, now click on the link to view the latest and greatest information. Or whoever clicks on that link, even if it's 2 months from now or 3 months from now, will still be able to get the latest and updated information without having to worry, oh, what version was that? Or when did you receive that link? Or when did you receive that? I'm controlling the versioning and the information in a single source, though 100 plus people that I'm not even aware of have access to that information. So very, very, very cool feature. Unfortunately, it's not a Microsoft or SharePoint unique one. They actually, this is a very similar feature that already exists in Google Drive. But when this thing gets out of hand, right, you're sharing, you lost control over who has access to it, or you want to kill access to it for whatever reason, you can come up here, you can select the document here in the info pane, and then under the sharing section, you can stop sharing. And basically what that's going to do, that's going to make that URL invalid, meaning that it was going to lock it down, and only those folks who have access to this library or file via explicit access that you're granting here through traditional SharePoint access methods would then have access to that file. So that's the get link feature. Now, if I was sharing this library, just say for example, I'm with a team of folks, and this library over time becomes tens of thousands of documents, maybe multiple folders, but there are certain items that I want to, or certain documents I want to highlight. You can do a pin, what they call pin to top. So now I can go through here. This is not a good example because this is just a copy of the same file, but I can go through here and then pin these items to the top, so anyone coming to this library would be able to see these items first, and then they'll be able to scroll down. Now this pin to top, I want to say, hold on, let me deselect this. I want to say this feature has made it into folders, but the pin to top option also applies to folders. So from the root of the library, I can have a certain set of documents, and then within the folder itself, oh, I thought I was moving things. Within the folder itself, I can pin. Is this not moving? What's going on? Okay, I have to go old school. Move to Deshaun. Not sure why that wasn't moving with the drag and drop. But anyway, I can come here. Yep, so that made it to the folder. So you can have these pins at the root of the library, or you can have these pins within any folder, which is very, very helpful. So that is just a nice way to highlight certain key documents within that particular container. So that's the pin to top. So next, let's take a look at how easy it is to edit these files. So back in the day, you would click on the file. Actually, I didn't want to go do that. I don't want to edit the actual document. I just want to edit the properties of the file. So back in the day, you had to select the file. You would go to the ribbon. You would do a view, or you click on the ellipse, and then you would click and edit. In this case, because we're dealing with the document library, we have to go to the properties and start editing the properties. So that Microsoft really simplified this option by leveraging the info pane. And it doesn't become apparent, but as soon as you click into one of these fields, you would then be able to edit that field, which is very, very convenient. And as you can see, this is auto saving. So as I'm putting in this information, I don't have to explicitly click a save button. As soon as I get out of that field, it's going to auto save for me. And as you can see here, for the respective fields for that particular item that I have highlighted, I can make those edits. Now, it would be cool if they allow you to do those bulk edits for those attributes, but that does not seem to be the case. So hopefully that's coming soon. And that's the cool thing. I mean, if I do the same video 5 months from now, I'm sure there will be new features. There will probably be different capabilities, and hopefully that bulk edit capability will be there, which will be really cool. While we're here in the activity information pane, you can see the recent activity, and it shows some of the edits that I've made, documents that I've created. And this is just me. Right now it's just only showing my activity, only because I'm the only one who's been modifying this. But if I had other users on my team, or other team members come in here and modify documents, add documents, it will show all of their activity. So this recent activity, if you do not have anything selected, shows you the activity on the library. As soon as you select a file, it will show you the activity for that particular file. And then obviously you have access to version history to view any other changes as you would normally would with any other SharePoint library or file. So that recent activity is very, very handy and very cool feature. So next we have the multiple download. Now this is actually very, very interesting. Again, this is a feature that already exists in Google Drive, but basically it allows you to select multiple files, come up here, click download, and it's going to zip those files into a zip file, and then allow you to download the zip and then extract that out to whatever you need to save it, to wherever you need to save it. And that's a pretty cool feature. Pretty cool feature that so far hasn't kicked in. Let me try refresh. I'm set up with, it may be some kinks and quirks, especially with that new feature, right? My tenant is set up, this particular tenant is set up as first release. So I get these features as soon as they are released, and sometimes if there's any bugs or issues, I get to an opportunity to experience those and report on them if I want to help out. But either way, this is not, it was working before. I'm not sure why it's not working now. Anyway, but that's the whole idea behind that. So you can select multiple files. Okay, so let me do a single file. But yeah, a couple of weird things are going on here. It won't let me do multiple? Alright, I'm gonna give up. Yeah, something must be wrong with it. Either way, but I saw it create the zip file. I actually didn't go through the process of actually downloading it and opening up the zip to confirm all my items were there, but that's the intent. So I'm sure there's probably a few kinks in there that they're working on to get those things hashed out. So the other piece is the sync option. So let me deselect this, and as you may have noticed, depending on what's selected, you can tell that this command bar dynamically changes with the available options based on your selection. So if I have a single item selection, you can see I have open, share, and all this other good stuff. But if I have multiple, I have to download, which is yet to work. And then, copy to, move to, and all this other good stuff. Speaking of copy to, move to, obviously I can come up here and create a folder dynamically and move items to that folder within the same library. If you are familiar with OneDrive and a document library in OneDrive, that move to has been expanded to allow you to move any files within your OneDrive to any library within SharePoint sites that you have access to, which is a really, really cool feature. We're hoping that I think it's already on the roadmap to have that same capability here in the document library, to where you actually can move these files to a different document library that lives in a different site that you have access to. So that's going to be cool whenever that's released. So the active sync item allows you, I've already set up this library to sync locally, and basically what it's doing, I configured it to sync here within this path on my local laptop, and I can come here and then create a new Word document. Let's just call this new doc. Then I can open this guy up. Let's see. Let's add some photos to this. Let's do. I'm a huge Tesla fan, so let's go ahead and grab this guy here, copy it down, go into my Word doc, paste it here. All right. Alright, so just a little edit here, and then hit save. And you can see that the save button, if you're familiar with OneDrive sync client, you would notice that, how the save button has the sync option, or has a different icon, which lets you know that you're part of a sync. So now I added that document here, and I come to my document library, click refresh. And it usually, here's the new document, here it is here. And I can click on, view this in OWA, and then there's my change. And now if I want to edit this document, I can edit it. Oh, it's going to be interesting because I have Word open. Let's see what happens. So I can edit this in the browser. Ah, nice. So if you try to do, this is not the co-editing capability. It seems like if you want to do co-editing, either you and your whole team needs to be both in OWA, or it seems like everyone on the team must be in the thick client. I have to confirm that. That's actually interesting. But then again, it could be detecting that I'm the same user and I have this already open in the thick client, so it may be conflicting that way. But that's an interesting test. I'll have to test it out to see how the co-editing piece works. But co-editing in the sense that Microsoft or SharePoint absolutely supports multiple edits to the same file at the same time. I think it's just going to be a mix of, do you have everyone using OWA to do those edits, meaning that Office Web Access, you're doing that in the browser, or if everyone on the team is editing that document in the thick client and that document is represented in the document library. So I'm not concerned with that piece. I know that's supported, you said before, but this particular scenario is interesting. But anyway, so that's the active sync. And then obviously anytime that I add a document here, so if, for example, I want to do a PowerPoint, I'm going to just launch this right here in the browser. Let's see. And then you can, I was always caught up with this, right? I mean, this is the name of the file. And that did not become apparent to me. I was like, wow, how can I rename this file if I'm doing edits in the browser? All right, and obviously this guy is going to auto-save for me. So now if I click on the link to get back to the document library, this guy appears there. And then if I go to the file system, hit refresh in my Explorer. So after some time, this guy to come down. And that's the thing, like there is, the sync process is automatic. So there's really no explicit sync. This may be tied to a timer job or something like that. That probably runs every 5 minutes or so. But yeah, but if you want to do like a sync now, you have that option. But I'm not going to do that. Let's see how long it takes. So while we're waiting on that, let's take a look at the new link feature, which is this guy here. You see that link to a sample PDF. Now this is really, really awesome. I think, you know, from coming from SharePoint 2013 to 0365, this solves one of those business scenarios where you have documents that live in one library. Just say, for example, if HR is hosting, they're the owner of all the policies and procedures from a HR perspective. But from a department standpoint, like say, for example, if you are in marketing or in IT, you want to highlight those documents, or you want to highlight those policies and procedures within your document library. You don't want to duplicate that, right? I mean, that's, you know, that's the last thing you want to do, is to get a copy of that and upload it in your document library. Then you're out of sync of any changes to that policy or any updates. So with this feature here, it allows you to link to that. So here I can link. I'm gonna just pick one of these at random. I'm gonna say I'm gonna link to this PDF 115. So this is policy 115. It lives in a different library, but I can link to it here, and I can also add any of my document library metadata to represent that link, which is really, really cool. So if you had a category that you know you wanted to put all your procedures in, that's relative to your marketing department, 5 of those are HR, are managed by HR, 5 of those are managed by you, maybe 2 or 3 of those are managed by legal. You can have all those in a single library. The ones that you manage will be the physical document. The ones that are managed by legal and HR, you can bring in as a link, but you can still put the metadata on there to kind of make it feel like your own and represent it there. Now, if I click on this, it's just going to pop open that document in OWA. And right there, well, actually, that was the Adobe PDF Viewer. You can also come in here and rename it. So 115 in this context may not make a lot of sense. So now what I can do, I can come up here to details. Now this is interesting. It allows me to change the URL without breaking the URL. So, you know, because, you know, with document libraries, you have those 2 columns, right? You have the name and you have the title, where the name represents the actual physical name of the document. The title can be whatever, user-friendly name, display name, whatever the case may be. So here, even if I'm in the document library context, if I want to rename that to make sense, you know, to me within this context, even though it's a 115 PDF policy document as named by HR, I can rename that here, and it still honors the link, which I thought was very, very cool. because I just knew, I was like, wow, I can change this URL. It's going to break the link, but actually it preserves it. Interesting, very, very interesting. But that's a cool feature. And not only, as you can see, if I create another link, not only does this pertain to documents, but if I wanted to link to Yahoo, for example, let's see, let's go to Yahoo Tech. But you can do, you can do websites, you can do, any other document outside of SharePoint. Anything that can be represented with a URL, you can link to that document using that feature, which is pretty awesome. So now if I go to, where was I? So I can just paste this guy in. Oh, and then give it a file name. Kind of threw me off there because it said file name, but then it had the extension .url. There we go. So that's my Yahoo test, and I click on it, and it takes me to Yahoo. And it seems like it pops open a new tab, which is really convenient, so that way the user doesn't lose their spot of where they are, even though they can explore that and see what that link represents. So that's the get link feature, which is pretty cool. And then the last one, hold on, let's go back and double check our, there we go, we're in my PowerPoint. So 2 to 3 minutes maybe. It synced up and then brought it down to the local. Okay, and then the final one is the people card. And basically, this is not going to be interesting because this is going to be all of my activity. But basically, you highlight the person's name within the document library or list, and it shows you recent activity. Like here is showing me my documents, my recent documents, and then I can hit show more. And it kind of expands them, kind of gives a little bit preview for those that have a preview. And then if I click on more, it looks like it's going to take me to my Delve profile and then highlight all of my recent documents. Now, I assume, and I have to test this out, I haven't had a chance to really test out the people card and how it looks with other users, but I just assume that, any recent documents that other team members or users who are in this library, if you highlight their name, I just assume that you will see their recent documents in it. And I assume, as in everything in SharePoint, that would be security trimmed, so you will only be able to see those documents that you too have access to. So it just makes it an easy way to navigate to other documents. So say for example, if I had a team member, Madison, on my team, and she's I know that we were collaborating on this document, but there's another document she spoke of or talked about in a recent meeting that's not in this library. I don't have to go hunt and see what that document is. I don't have to send her an email and ask her to send me a link to that document. I can just go to her people card option and look at something that's recent and say, oh, yeah, there's that document. That's the one she talked about yesterday. And then click on that and then help navigate. So, I mean, a lot of cool features with enhancements within the document library. I think when you migrate into O365, I think, this becomes not necessarily a training. It may be self-explanatory, but highlighting some of those key features that a lot of your users and within the organization may not be aware of, that, hey, here's a new way to handle this scenario or this business problem, versus some of the traditional items. Really quick, let's go here. I'm just going to go to the home, and because I'm using the new modern site page, I can go right here to home and create a new list. This is going to create a custom list, meaning that one that's not based off a template. And this is pretty cool because now I can modify this. If I want it to appear in the left navigation, I can check this option and hit create. Again, just in the matter of 3 clicks, I have a library created in the left nav, whereas before, it was a little bit different. And here, and immediately, because a custom library only comes out with a single site column called title, I can come in here and start creating the titles as we kind of discuss and experienced before in the document library. And then also with these new apps, I'm not going to go into detail in this video, but obviously tied to this custom list, you have the Microsoft Flow where you can go ahead and create a workflow based off Flow, or you have Power Apps where you can create a mobile-friendly app or application or form based on the columns and information here within this list. So just again, in the views, create views, edit views, and all this other good stuff becomes very similar to document libraries. The info pane, to where you're selecting items and you'll be able to see the details of those different site columns become available as well. Very similar to document libraries. So that's it for this episode. Actually, it wants me to create. Oh, let's do this. All right. That's it for this episode. Those are some of the key enhancements to document libraries and lists. Again, a lot of these changes are a little buggy because I'm in first release. I think most of you guys would probably be using either a multi-tenant, dual tenant or prod and non-prod tenant to get this set up, where your production tenant would be standard release. So most of these features will be quality and baked in, and hopefully got most of the bugs out. But then again, as far as playing around and see what's up and coming, or test driving a lot of the new features, the first release selection, the first release setting is definitely the best way to go, and especially to communicate some of these new enhancements to the organization as a whole. Okay, so I guess I'll see you guys in episode 3, and that's it for this one, and I'll see you soon.